Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about environmental engineering and what all the field is about. First of all though, let's define what environmental engineering is. Environmental engineering is the application of engineering principles and practices to better the environment and public health by minimizing the impact of human activity. While the term environmental engineer may be relatively new, the job has been around since ancient times. One example is the ancient Roman cloacae. These have been around since the 6th century BC, and they were essentially enclosed masonry channels that allowed water from constantly flowing channels and fountains within the city and stormwater to be carried outside the city to the nearby Tiber River. Rudimentary toilets were also included in this by boring it through the top of the channels so that waste could be deposited directly into what was essentially the sewer system of the day. This was quite the engineering feat for the Romans, and they celebrated through the addition of Cloacina, the Roman goddess of sewers, to the Roman pantheon of gods. Now, while environmental engineering might not be so high profile as it once was, it is still quite significant in its contributions to society and should be celebrated as that.
Environmental engineers serve to mitigate pollution. A pollutant is any substance that adversely affects the ecosystem or human health. Pollutants can be both from human sources, such as cars, buildings, sewer systems, etc., or natural sources, such as dust storms, erosion, volcanoes, animal wastes, and even wildfires. Urban areas typically must deal with a lot of pollution in a small amount of area because there are usually a lot of people in a small space. This typically leads to higher concentrations of pollutants in these areas. These areas are typically characterized by point source pollution. Point sources are places where pollutants are released into the environment at one point or from one singular identifiable source. These can be things like a smokestack, releasing ash into the atmosphere. Point sources typically are associated with higher concentrations of pollutants in one small space. While urban areas typically struggle with lots of pollutants in a small area, rural areas are by no means exempt from pollution problems either. Many pollutants on farmland can get washed into nearby water bodies where they collect. This is called non-point source pollution. This is where pollutants are distributed over an area where they can wash off into another area, or a water body, for example. Non-point source pollution may not be point source pollution, but it still is pollution. Moral of the story is pollutants are everywhere, and if left unchecked, they can cause some seriously unpleasant or even unlivable circumstances.
One example of a massive pollution cleanup is Love Canal. Love Canal was a neighborhood in Niagara Falls, New York, that had been used as a toxic waste landfill for decades before it was a neighborhood. Residents of the area soon began to feel negative effects, including leukemia. The area was later cleaned up as a Superfund site, a designation reserved for the worst cases of pollution cleanup requiring large-scale federal attention. In response to environmental disasters like these, many people started lobbying for change on the governmental level as it pertained to the environment. Because of this, in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, a flurry of legislation was passed to govern things relating to the environment. Among these acts were OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Association, was established to make sure workers were healthy in their workplaces. The Clean Air Act was passed in order to make sure that the ambient air all around us was free of pollution, so we wouldn't be breathing in the smoke from nearby smokestacks and things like that. The Clean Water Act was designed to protect us from contaminants in our water, mostly to deal with surface water, drinking water, things of that sort. And lastly, RCRA, the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, which largely governed waste and disposal and recovery. Things like recycling, landfills, all those things were applicable to RCRA.
Environmental engineers clearly have many areas in which they can contribute. It's a growing field. On top of that, environmental engineering is ranked by Forbes as number 5 of the 15 most valuable college degrees. According to Forbes, the median starting salary for environmental engineers is $51,700. Pretty good. And the median mid-career salary is $88,600. You can do a lot of good and make a lot of bank.
Every time you take a drink of water, throw out a bag of trash, or take a deep breath of fresh air, you can thank an environmental engineer. You can also become an environmental engineer and be a solution to problems faced all over the world. You can be assured as an environmental engineer that you'll make an impact on communities far and wide.